Hi, I'm Richard Rogers, and I absolutely hope that you enjoy today's spiritual message. You know, we at Unity of Phoenix Spiritual Center are committed to helping people live better lives. We're going to provide you tools over and over, spiritual tools that allow you to live your best possible life. And if you want to leave a donation to continue to allow the work that we do to support other people just like you, we say thank you. Thank you for your generosity, because this ministry is committed to making the world a better place.
Okay. What I like about this series, right, is we're always teaching spiritual principles around here. I love that about this place. Because for me, spiritual principles make things easier, right? When you can actually understand that there are spiritual principles in the world and that you don't have to make that stuff up or figure it out, you can actually just apply spiritual principles in your life. And they work if you work them, right? And so what I love about this series is that there are principles that allow you to be happy. Because I think most people want to be happy. Would you agree with me? That most people want to be happy. I just don't think most people have ever given the tools, the principles, that really allow themselves to be happy. That most of us believe that it was either something you had or something you didn't have. It was either an on-off switch, and they didn't actually understand that there were principles that could allow anybody to be happy with anything. Now, you can always say, well, Richard, you can't be happy if this is going on or this is going on and this is going on. And it's like, okay, so let's take these principles and let's really apply them. Let's really see if they work. Because if they're principles, is there any time when 2 plus 2 isn't 4? Hopefully not. Right? 2 plus 2 hopefully is 4. I once time had a CPA who said, you know how you know a good CPA? And I said, how do you know that? And he said, when you ask a good CPA, what is 2 plus 2, and they say to you, what do you want it to be? I thought, no, that sounds like I'm going to jail. I don't want it. Like, I want it to be like the same all the time. Like, I want it to be a principle. I want it to be something I can count on, right? That I can just know what it is. So we have several principles. Let's shoot the first one up there. You guys ready? Subtraction. Now, the number one principle in being happy is that life is not about addition. That happiness is not about addition. And the way that most of us were taught is if we just get everything we want, then we're going to be happy, right? And the problem is that some of us have been radically successful, had everything we wanted, and we still didn't get happy, right? Because happiness is not about stuff. Happiness is about us. It's learning how to subtract the thoughts, the beliefs, the judgments that keep us from being unhappy. So the first week we just focused on what are the thoughts that you've been thinking that don't make you happy? Do you have a God-given right to think unhappy thoughts? Yes. You have free will. You have a God-given right to be as miserable as you want to be, right? But the way to get happy is to start subtracting. Anybody ever had a judgment about somebody else that never made them happy? Even if you think your judgment is 100% accurate, is it making you happy? If it's not making you happy, then let it go. Over and over again, attitudes, judgment, concepts, beliefs, thoughts that aren't making you happy, the process is just keep throwing them out. And the reason this is spiritually true is that when you get to the basics, when you get to your essence, your soul is happy. Now, your soul may not be happy when you put all this craziness on top of it, but when you start subtracting out all the craziness and you just get down to your soul God is enough for your soul, that your soul is profoundly happy. So over and over again, the first principle of happiness is subtraction. So what thought, what belief, what judgment, what attitude would you have to let go of to be happy? Well, I want to think that thought. Great. How miserable do you want to be with that thought? Right? And again, it's just pulling them out. And there's a moment where you realize that there's nothing in your soul that doesn't make you happy. I know it's a double negative. I could say it this way. Everything in your soul makes you happy because you've done all the work of letting go. Okay, let's go to the second principle we worked on. Now, in most times, I tell you not to keep score when it comes to other people, right? Because for most of us, what we learned how to do was judge ourselves by the world around us. So we think we're doing good by keeping score with our neighbors or our friends or our brothers or our sisters. And I really teachers spend a lot of time helping people say, don't keep score by looking at others, but I really want you to keep score by looking at you, because you can only heal, you can only transform that which you're conscious of. So if you don't know how happy you are today, it's probably not going to improve. So what I invited you to do in the beginning was every day keep a number between 1 and 10, how happy you are. And just notice that number. Are you a 3? Are you a 4? Or are you a 5? And just pay attention so that every day you get to see, because you're the only one that matters. You're the only one that counts. You're the only one that gets to decide how happy you are. So every day just keep a score. Now, the third one. Commitment. This is where it gets interesting. Because for some of us, we have a really low commitment to being happy. We have a really high commitment to being miserable. Have you ever wanted to be miserable just to punish somebody else? Right? And you don't want to admit it, right? Because it's like, no, that's just weird. That's wrong, right? But the truth is that sometimes we make ourselves miserable just so that we can punish the one we love the most, right? Because they're supposed to care if we're miserable. Because we want them to know how miserable we are, because we think it's what? Their fault. Like, they're making me miserable, so here goes. You're going to get both doses of it. Right? So over and over again in this process, what I invited you to come back to over and over again is, what's your commitment to being happy? And is happiness more important to you than being right? Is happiness more important than hanging out with the old ideas or hanging out with the old people? So over and over it comes down to, what's your commitment to level of happiness? Okay, let's go to the next one. And then we talked about mindset. And the important part of mindset, it basically comes down to two ideas. That it's hard to be happy when we have a victim mindset. Does that make sense to everybody? If you believe that you're a walking victim, are you going to have high levels of happiness or low levels of happiness? Low levels of happiness. And so when it comes to mindset, over and over again, I wanted you to look at, do you feel like you're the master and the controller of your life, or are you just a victim to circumstance? Because over and over again, if you feel like you're a victim to circumstances, you're not going to have a high level of happiness. So we actually had to take back the who's in charge of your life, right? Last week we focused on, let's do this one. Give it to me. Last week I invited you to focus on positivity. And what that means is I wanted you to focus on every day 3 things that make you happy. Right? How many of you did the homework for last week? Wow, fabulous, right? So last week your homework was, every day I wanted you to write down 3 things for which you're grateful, 3 things that were positive in your life, 3 things, so that the more we focus on what's positive and good, what happens to our thinking? It moves in that direction, right? That if we focus on the negative, what tends to happen? We go negative. If we focus on the positive, we tend to go positive. Now, does that mean that when you go positive, does that mean that everything in your life is instantly going to be positive? No, but your focus, as you focus on it, what's one of the underlying principles that we have in Unity? That our inner life creates our outer life. So as we begin to focus more and more on the positive, guess what we're going to create more and more of in our life? The positive. The inner creates the outer, right? Great. All right, let's get to tonight. This is going to be so much fun. Okay, so tonight's about falling up. Don't put it up yet. Now, you know I love this book. How many of you are reading this book along with me? 6 of us, 3 of us, 1 of us, 2 of us, right? So I think this is one of the best, but there's 2 books that I love. This is one of the 2 best books I've ever read on being happy. And it's Shawn Achor, and it's The Happiness Advantage. This is principle number 4, Falling Up. As a graduate student, I was often encouraged to sell my body. Nothing, really? Not even a giggle? I thought that was funny. The psychology department was constantly offering money for willing research subjects, and since I was almost always short of funds, I was willing to be a guinea pig for experiments that ranged from just mere humiliation to full-on trickery to anything from being uncomfortable in social encounters to repeated MRIs to grueling trials of mental and physical ability. But the most memorable experience of them all was a seeming benign experiment called helping the elderly. The study was 3 hours long and promised to pay $20. To get things underway, 2 research assistants handed me a set of bicycle reflectors with Velcro straps and a pair of white, tight bike shorts. One of the assistants said firmly, "Please attach these reflectors to each of the joints on your body and put on the shorts. Oh, and we ran out of white T-shirts, so you're going to have to do this topless. Do you wish to proceed?" For $20? They clearly underestimated me, of course. So a few minutes later, clad in reflective sensors covered my elbow, wrist, and knees, I emerged looking like a bare-chested robot. They explained the study. Researchers were examining how the elderly fall to the ground so that they could eventually help senior citizens avoid injury. Of course, they didn't actually ask the elderly to fall repeatedly, so they used grad students. I was told to walk down a padded hallway in the dark while a video camera recorded the position and the reflection of my joints. As I walked down, one of 4 things would happen. The floor would suddenly slide to the left, and I would fall into the right. The floor would suddenly slide to the right, and I would fall to the left. Sorry. I'm sorry. The third option was a cord attached to my right leg would be yanked from behind me, and I would fall flat on my face. 4, if none of these things happened by the time I got to the end of this artificial hallway, I was supposed to throw myself on the ground. The last one sounded especially ludicrous, that what kind of elderly person intentionally throws themselves on the floor, okay? But there was $20 on the line. So for the next hour, I fell down once every 30 seconds for 120 falls. The research assistant emerged giggling sheepishly, admitted that they forgot to turn on the video camera. And unfortunately, they would need to retape the entire experiment. After another 120 falls later, I was bruised, battered, and exhausted. With all the gear I had, merely picking myself off the mat took an enormous amount of energy, and the whole ordeal had taken a painful toll on my body. When I finally stumbled out of the hallway, the researchers had been joined by a distinguished-looking professor summoned to the investigation because a major irregularity had occurred in the experiment. The study, it turned out, had nothing to do with helping the elderly. These researchers were actually studied the motivation and resilience. They wanted to know how much pain and discomfort they could put people through before they would give up. How much a person could withstand to get a reward that was set out before them. In my case, the answer was a lot. The professor had come to the hospital where I was that Saturday afternoon because I was the only one who had ever lasted the full 3 hours. As I stood there, they explained all that had happened to me. I couldn't wonder if I was supposed to feel stupid for withstanding all of the abuse for a mere $20. But before I could say anything, the professor had handed me 10 crisp $20 bills. It's at least we could do for you putting up with all of that. The more subjects take, the falls on the mat and keep going, the larger the reward is. You won the grand prize today, $200. Okay? Now, how many of you would feel like maybe you have too much free time on your hands? Right? That $20 really wasn't worth that much effort, right? Right? So the real question is, how many times can you get knocked down and still get back up? Because in life, that really is the question, right? Because we want to pretend like if we're spiritual, we're never going to get knocked down. Or if we're spiritual, it's not going to hurt when we get knocked down because we're spiritual. But the reality is that every time we get knocked down, at some level it hurts. And at some level, we don't want to get back up. Because we're smart enough to know if we've fallen once, what's the probability that we're going to fall again? If we've been disappointed or frustrated in life, what's the probability that's going to happen again? Anybody want to say hi? Hi, right? So we're in this place of should I stay down and just give up, or should I get back up? And what I want you to see is that there's a huge correlation between those that get back up and happiness. Those that just lie on the ground after they've been beat up by life, after they've been disappointed or frustrated or hurt, tend to be less happy significantly. So the question is, how do we get ourselves back up if getting back up is the way to happiness? Can everybody think of some time in your life where you have been knocked down by life and that you had to make a decision as you were lying on the mat, am I going to get up from this one? Has everybody had that experience? When you knew that laying there and just giving up on life was a choice. It was a possibility. You could do that. You knew that other people haven't gotten back up. You could just lay there and just kind of ride the rest of your life out and never get back up. Never overcome, never try again. Just give up on life. Does everybody remember a time in your life where you actually had to make that conscious choice? And sometimes, if we tell ourselves the truth, there's a part of us that just wants to go back to bed and pull the covers over our head. True? So what he says, let me go on. The brain is constantly creating a revised mental map to help us navigate our way through this complex, ever-changing world. The tendency is that we are wired for thousands of years of evolution in order to survive. We must create physical maps of our environment, maps of strategy for getting food and sex, and maps that possibly will show the effects of each action. But these maps aren't just crude survival in the wilderness. They're vital for our success and thriving in every aspect of our life. The most successful decisions come when we're thinking clearly and creatively enough to recognize all the paths available to us and accurately predicting the path that will lead us from our problem to the greatest outcome. On every map after a crisis or adversity, there are 3 mental paths that we create. One that circles around where we are currently, right? So the first map or the first path that we tend to see is the one that keeps us exactly where we are, right? Now, if you're not in a good place and the mental map that you create for yourself keeps you in a not good place, is your chance of being happy high or low? Low, right? He said the second way that we create mental maps is a mental map that actually shows us going down. So we're already down, and the second mental map that we sometimes create is, and things are only going to get worse. Now, if we weren't happy with the first map, can you imagine we're going to even be less happy with the second map, right? He said the third one, let me just read it. Ironically, the path that we have trouble seeing is often the most positive, productive one. And in fact, when we feel helpless and hopeless, we stop believing that such a path actually exists. We don't even bother to look for it, but it is the very path that we should be looking for, because, as we will see, our ability to find this third path is the difference between those that are crippled by failure and those who rise above it. So here's the deal. One of the things I want you to see tonight is this third higher path, the path up. Sometimes when you're down, really down, it's almost impossible for you to see by yourself, right? Does that make sense? Have you ever just lost faith, lost hope, right? Now, one of the benefits of being in spiritual community is that you actually don't have to see it for yourself. Anybody ever back up their computer? Right? One of the benefits of backing up your computer is if your hard drive gets corrupted, hopefully the backup is not. Right? Does that make sense? So that you have a backup that's not corrupted. So when you look at your own life like this, if you get knocked down, and that causes your belief system, your feelings about you to get corrupted, your ability in your hard drive is not very accurate. Will you give me that one? In spiritual community, you have people around you that believe more in you than you could actually believe for yourself. Does that make sense? That's why we have prayer partners and mastermind partners and chaplains. Because what I want you to see is that when you get in your stuck place, you are not the best authority on you. Has everybody been in that place? Where your life just looks darker and darker, doomier and doomier, right? But you actually need people who love and believe in you to believe in your possibilities more than you can believe in your possibilities right now. We actually need each other to overcome our own corrupted hard drives. So one of the things I want you to see is in your path of getting happier is I want you to begin to see the benefit in having spiritual community and people that you regularly pray with, that you begin to trust when you can't trust your own doubt. Or maybe when you trust your own doubt too much. Does that make sense? That you actually need people that you can reach out to overcome your own limitation. And that's why, how many of you ever heard that somebody say like the spiritual life really is like the lone wolf, right? That we kind of think of our spiritual life as that we're the lone wolf and we're going through life and it's just about us. Well, one of the things that just really struck me one time is a documentary on wolves in Yosemite. And the only wolf that is a lone wolf is a sick or dying wolf. That wolves, by their nature, do not isolate, right? So when we look at that term as a lone wolf, that's not who you want to be. A wolf doesn't want to be that guy, right? You actually want to be in a community of people that believe in you, that when you're in your place of doubt, can help you up so that you can see the path up. Because over and over and over again, just right now, let's do a little experiment, right? I want you just for a second, a moment. I want you to imagine your life getting worse and worse and worse, right? Close your eyes for a moment. Just imagine your life getting worse and worse and worse, right? Now, I want you to ask yourself, is that my dominant thought? is that where I live? Is that's where I spend most of my mental time? Is a vision of my life getting worse and worse and worse, right? No shame, just see it, right? Now, I want you to imagine your life just getting better and better and better and better and better. And I want you to imagine a path up. Now, how does the path up make you feel? Right? Does it make you feel better? It does. That over and over again, what I want you to see is that if you can't imagine a path up, we need help. You need to have a group of people around you that can hold a vision for you until you can hold it for yourself. You need to have people on a regular basis that are praying with you, that see your potential, that see your spirit, that see your light, and are holding a vision for you so that we're moving up when you can't hold that for yourself. Because you have a right to have a bad day. You have a right to have a bad month. You even have a right to have a bad year. But when you're having a bad day, month, year, you need to have people that come in right beside you that still believe for you. Right? You need to have the rest of your pack that feeds you when you can't feed yourself, that take care of you when you've lost your way. And that happiness, your happiness, requires that you're building that system of support. Does that make sense? That over and over and over again, are you doing it on your own or are you doing it together? Because if you're doing it on your own and you trip, you're going down. Is that true? If you're doing it together and you trip, there's somebody right behind you that catches you before you face plant. Right? Has everybody face planted at least once in your life? It hurts. It does. It hurts when you face plant. Right? But when you're walking with somebody, or if you're walking with a bunch of people, there's a high probability that somebody's going to catch you, or at least you're going to have somebody to fall on before you hit. Does that make sense? So over and over again, what I want you to begin to see is the third way. Let's go to the principle for tonight. Let's give me that one. The next one, this one. Your job is not to resist falling down. In fact, let me read you one more quote. The earlier we face difficulty and drawbacks, the better prepared we are to deal with the inevitable obstacles along the path. The studies have borne this out. The earlier in life we face obstacles and learn to overcome them, the stronger we are. Okay? But what's the premise here? Is we have to have overcome them. Right? If we face adversity young and we don't overcome it, what did we learn? We actually learn hopelessness. Right? So if we can overcome challenges at a young age, we actually learn how to pick ourselves up. So over and over again, what I want you to see tonight is that we have to be responsible for our own level of hopelessness. Researchers took two groups of people into a room, turned on loud music, and then told them to figure out how to press the buttons to turn it off. The first group tried every combination of buttons, but nothing worked to stop the music. The second group acted on the controls and the given panels of buttons and successfully turned off the noise. Then both groups were given the same task again. They were put into new rooms where the obnoxious noise was again played. This time, the two groups could easily turn off the noise. So the first test, no matter how hard they worked, they couldn't turn off the noise. Second group they put in the room, they could turn off the noise. They quickly figured out how to turn off the noise. They turned off the noise. They do the exact same experiment again. This time, both groups could turn off the noise. This time, both groups could easily stop the noise by simply moving the hand from one side to the another. The control group quickly figured out how and stopped the blaring noise. But the group that had first been exposed to the noise but couldn't stop it didn't even try to stop the noise. Was it just as obnoxious for both groups? Yes. One group was actually empowered, went from being a victim to actually overcoming the situation, and they learned that they could overcome the situation. So when they were put back in the room, of course they figured out how to overcome the situation and turn it off. The first group, though, they tried and tried and tried. They couldn't figure out how to overcome it. So what did they learn? But to be hopeless, helpless, victims of circumstances. And so there's a point where you don't even try. They did the same experience on dogs, and just over and over again, they were able to replicate hopelessness. It was so sad. So here's what we're going for tonight. I want you, in every area in your life tonight, to look for the path up. In every area of your life, I want you to look for the path up. If it's in your finances, I want you to look for the path up. If it's in your relationship, I want you to look for the path up. If it's in your work, I want you to look for the path up. If it's wherever it is, I want you to, if it's in your health, I want you to look for the path up, because there is a path up. There is a path up. But we have to be willing to engage it, to really begin to play in it, so that we can actually begin to see it. Because the overriding evidence shows that if you don't believe there's a path up, it not only affects that area in your life, but it affects every area in your life, because hopelessness begins to bleed into every area. I was built to be an overcomer. Will you say that with me? I was built to be an overcomer. Let's just say it like we mean it. I was built to be an overcomer. Overcoming life makes me happy. Together? Overcoming life makes me happy. Let's go to the next slide. Let's go to the last one. Okay, so he gives us this formula that I want to talk to you about. The ABCD of life, right? So the A is for adversity, okay? Now, adversity, does everybody have adversity in one way or another, right? So adversity is just the facts, just the details. I lost my job, my dog died, whatever the thing is. It's just the facts, right? B, the belief, this is where it starts getting interesting. Because what you believe begins to affect everything else. And what you believe about that adversity actually matters. If you believe that you can overcome it, you actually increase the probability of overcoming it. It actually changes your mood, your attitude. It changes everything. But if in your belief, you believe that you're lost, you're down, you're hopeless, it's never going to work, then everything in your life is affected by that. Then it takes us to the consequence. Now, the consequence is living out your belief, right? So let me give you an example. So on Saturday, I went to Safeway, and somewhere along my shopping experience, I dropped my car key. And by the time I got back to my car was unlocked. I thought that was interesting. Right? So I loaded up the groceries in the back of the car and called the neighbor. She brought over another key, drove home. As I'm unloading the groceries, I noticed that my bag in the back seat is not there. In my bag is my computer that has all my stuff. I mean, it has all my business stuff. It has all it has everything. I mean, literally has everything. And I wanted to be happy, right? But my first reaction was, right? So the adversity was losing my computer, right? My belief was, holy moly, right? All my information now is going to be out on the dark web, or it's going to be, they're going to figure them into my bank accounts, and, and just mentally, guess where I went? everywhere, right? And now that I'm doing service every 15 minutes around here, Saturday night is not a real good night for my attitude to go, right? To go down, right? So about 3 o'clock in the morning, so it took a few hours, right? I got to the place where I could just say, oh, I'm ready for a miracle, right? And the amazing thing is, nothing changed in the outer world. The only change happened where? In me. The consequence, like nothing's happened. My bank account hasn't been touched. Nothing's been touched. Nothing, like there's been no, other than the fact I've lost my computer for, I'm assuming it's going to find its way home at any moment now. But there's been no consequence. I want you to hear that. There was no, so far, right, 5 days in, no consequence. Can I say that one more time? There's been no consequence. So when I was miserable for a few hours, there was still no consequence. Now that I haven't been miserable for 5 days, guess what? There's been no consequence. Now at some point, my computer is either going to come find its way home, or I'm going to have to replace it. Can I do that? Yes. Right? Is everything safe and secure at the Rogers house? Yes. We haven't. There hasn't been any. Our house wasn't stolen, or car wasn't stolen. We lost a computer. Right? Does that make sense? So one of the things they want us to get to is the consequence was nothing. Then the disputation, they talk about when your mind goes south, they invite you to argue with it. And actually begin to look at it as if you were talking to a friend. Because what they say is the research shows that if it only is going on internally within you, you can't always decipher your own craziness. Have you ever heard your own craziness? It can get kind of crazy in there, right? And they actually say either write it down or actually imagine that you're talking to somebody else and actually say, oh, yes, that could happen, but I can't worry about that now. Or, yes, that could happen, and I'm going to do this and this to protect myself. That could happen, but this is how I'm going to handle it, right? So that you actually move the conversation, try to move it out of your head, outside of you, so that you can change the path that you're on. How many of you can see over and over again times in your life where you actually unwillingly just took the path down? Anybody? And the path down didn't really move you into a greater life. It didn't really reveal greater possibilities. It didn't really show you God. It just made you feel alone and desperate and scared and want to give up. This fourth week, this is a key shift. Okay? This is really you taking charge of your mental map. Is your mental map going to go up, or is it going to go down? Are you going to stay where you are and just hope you keep treading water, or are you going to move to a higher level of good? It's 100% about you. And I went way over time, so let's pray. I invite you to open your mind, your heart, your soul to the activity of God that is right here, right now. God, let me see up. Let me see my path up. That this is the life that I've known. This is where I am. This is where I struggle. This is where I am right now. God, reveal the path up. Reveal the path up. Let me see a greater good. Let me see a greater possibility. In the name and through the power of the living Christ, we give thanks. And so it is. Amen.